but you hear that rabbit howling, Yeah, it's the sound all victims make in therapy, I guess.
I close my eyes, I hear you calling to me. I try to block it out, but I'm just falling so deep down the rabbit hole where I don't wanna go.
Imagine having to communicate through 92 puppets every day, and each puppet having its own little personality. Just imagine how exhausting that would be. But what if that was the only way to make it through each day because the trauma was just too much for one person without all of the puppets sharing that pain and grief? Trudy Chase was a person who shared her life with 92 personalities because alone the child abuse she had suffered was just too much to bear. She said having 92 personalities was much easier than dealing with the pain because the pain was so severe. She called these personalities her troop. One of the troop members was named Rabbit. Rabbit held all the pain, and when being hypnotized by her therapist, it would be Rabbit who would scream like a baby bunny that needed help. The screaming was so terrifying for those who had to witness it. This personality, Rabbit, would recall the pain that Trudy wanted to forget and release it as a howl. This is a true story of how the troop saved Trudy Chase's life. Hello, my name is Holly. Welcome to the Murder She Shed. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you will smash that like and subscribe button so we can spread child abuse awareness to others on this platform. This is a very important subject to me since I was SA'd when I was about 6 years old by my granny's neighbor. I usually don't start my intros so serious. Usually I say, help a nerdy Southern girl out by smashing that subscribe button. I just want my subscribers to know why I talk about these cases. I believe if we don't talk about this subject and decide to keep these awful things in the dark as adults, how do you think children, youth, or even some adults are going to learn to talk about their feelings if even we cannot talk about this subject? I'm sure I'm going to be demonetized once again, as I always, usually about 90% of my cases get demonetized. But this channel was never about money to me. It was about spreading awareness because child abuse is so devastating and so close to my heart because I had to experience that myself. And I really don't want other children to go through what I had to endure. I hope through my true stories and openness on this channel, we can learn that it is okay to tell people your story. There are more people out there like you that have been through unspeakable things than you even know about because they also keep their voice silenced. Tired of having to keep our voice silent. Maybe my channel will teach you it is okay to bring it into the light in order to help yourself and others. Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised on this case. Also on the background, you're going to hear locusts and stuff screeching. Maybe my chickens laying an egg and balking and carrying on. And I apologize. It's just life on a farm. When Trudy was just 2 years old, her mother separated from her bio father. Trudy thought her mother, Margaret, was pretty and beautiful, but her mother did not feel the same about Trudy. Her mother always told Trudy that she was ugly and stupid and lied a lot. She would tell Trudy that she's stupid because she didn't pay attention. Margaret thought that if Trudy screamed in pain, it meant she was finally paying attention. So she would hit Trudy with her hand or a strap until Trudy screamed. Trudy and her mother, Margaret, moved in with a man on a farm near a small town in the vicinity of Rochester, New York. This man was her mom's new boyfriend, Elwood Cassius Armald. Elwood's mother, Alma, loved him, not in the way most mothers love their sons, however. When Elwood was a child, he slept with his mother in thunderstorms. When Daddy, as Alma called her husband, was away working with road crews. Alma praised Elwood as being a perfect child. Elwood's younger sister was ignored by Alva while he received all the attention. Elwood's dad was a quiet man who stayed away from home just as much as possible. Now, don't blame him when you find out that Elwood was his mother's lover because she basically abused him and, well, it even carried into adulthood. that they would carry on like that. Trudy met Elwood 2 weeks before her mother and father were divorced. Her mother actually divorced her father to go live with her soon-to-be stepfather, Elwood. Elwood had come to their apartment, and during that visit, he had set Trudy on his lap. It started right away. He unbuttoned his shirt, and his hairy chest was exposed. He had Trudy play with his hairy chest and eventually eased her hand inside his pants. He was smiling the whole time, and Trudy who was only 2, thought it was just a game. She didn't understand what was happening. She didn't get much attention from her mother, and here a man was smiling at her and acted like he liked her. So Trudy just thought it was a fun little game. And at first, she really enjoyed Elwood's attention.
And he walked in one day and sat down at the kitchen table and put us on his lap. Mm-hmm. And it began. Mm-hmm. I can remember the taste of caramel candy in my mouth. And him. Mm-hmm. And he just kept leaning back. And the hand went down further and further. And we couldn't say the word for, I guess, until about 2 years into therapy. Mm-hmm. Couldn't say the word. Couldn't figure out why.
At first, he only watched Trudy when she would be the most exposed. One of his favorite times to do this would be when Trudy started going to the outhouse to use the bathroom, after she got potty trained in the outhouse. Trudy would remember a dark shadow approaching the outhouse and an eye peeping through the slats as she began to use the bathroom. What she didn't know was Elwood had also drilled a hole into the back of the box toilet where he could see her bottom and the waste that dropped below. But y'all know the old outhouses, and it's got a little box, and then in the back of it, he had drilled a hole. So there he could see her bottom sitting down on the lid and what she was doing underneath that toilet there. Just disgusting, really. Her potty training skills began to regress because she held off using the bathroom as long as she could. And sometimes she would have accidents and get in trouble. Her mother would get mad at her, and she didn't understand why her potty-trained child was suddenly having accidents. Or supposedly, she didn't understand. A few years later, her half-brother would find the little hole in her closet that her stepfather had peeked through, too, in order to watch her. This traumatized her as she realized in that moment that she never had any privacy. Not even when she thought that she was alone in her bedroom or alone in her bathroom. She had no privacy. Can't even imagine what that must feel like, that constantly you were being watched by a creep. The memories when she was real young are just flashes. But Trudy does remember just a few months after they moved onto the farm with Elwood. It was summer, and Elwood's whole family had came out and spent the day with them on the farm. When the family went to leave, Elwood was nowhere to be found. Later, after they said goodbye to his family, Trudy went out in the cornfield to see if he could possibly be there because they had looked just about everywhere else. Elwood was there, lying between 2 of the rows with his hands behind his head, waiting for her. He was uncovered. He always wore work pants and a shirt, but his pants were down that day. He waved Trudy to come to him there in the cornfield. There he met her for the first time. This is when Trudy began to develop her multiple personalities. Her mind could not handle the sadistic abuse that she would be put through, so her thoughts and feelings began to be shared with these other identities. She eventually developed 92 different personalities who had different names, and each one had a different purpose to help her through the horrifying abuse she was subject to. We're not going to go through all these personalities, but each one had a different purpose for why they were there.
Something has to give. You can't dump that much on a human being and not lose something. I heard a voice one day, a tiny little voice, a child's voice, excuse me, calling out the name. And just calling the name, and I said to myself, my God, I know that I talk to myself, but I'm hearing this voice. What is this? And then that stopped, thank God. But shortly after that, like you woke up one morning and in the bedroom, it was all gritty and gray, and you looked around and they were all there. Except the mind is so kind to you, it gave you the impression of there being only 7 And as we went on in therapy and you realized that the number was growing, you said, boy, I must really be crazy. I've got to be a Looney Tune. But there was Dr. Phillips, and thank God he said, this is normal for you. You are, no, excuse me, you are normal within your frame of reference. It was like a blessing, and I don't mean to shout, I'm sorry. It was a blessing. You are normal within your frame of reference, okay? I'm fine.
These personalities help her to forget what she had been put through. But after therapy, she began to remember all the things her stepdad had done to her. At 3, she remembered sitting in a high chair that she had outgrown and no longer sat in while eating meals. But she sat in it for an awful reason. She wondered why she was sitting there, but as an adult, one member of her troop allowed her to see why. Her mother had gone to the hospital to give birth to her half-sister. Her stepfather was at home and he had set Trudy in that high chair and then tied her little arms to the chair. With no tray on the chair, he made her perform on him. There was another incident that she remembers on the kitchen table where he had put a white sheet, or there had been a white sheet there for some reason. And there he set her on that table and made her perform OS on him again on that spot. And it literally almost killed her because she choked. Let's just say, I'm not going to say on what. She choked, came out her nose, came out her mouth, and she quit breathing. Basically, eventually her breath came back and she did live, but almost, anyway, that one was rough to even say. This is a rough story. I told you guys this was rough. We'll get through it. When Trudy was just in 2nd grade, the family moved into a much larger farm. Her half-sister was 2 years old by that time. Elwood then started molesting her little sister too. She remembers one time when her sister was 7, walking into the barn, and on the hay lay her little sister, and Elwood stood in front of her with his pants down. Her half-brother was also essayed about Elwood. She remembers that her half-brother was very nice and tried to protect her when he could. As an adult, Trudy could not recall a single farm animal on her stepfather's farm and knew for some odd reason she hated animals. After she started remembering what happened on that farm, she then knew why. The only animal she had ever liked was a pet bunny her brother had saved in a field. Her stepfather always stomped on the baby bunnies he found in the field while he was plowing. One day, her half-brother was able to save a particular little baby bunny from getting stomped, and he brought it home, put it in a cage, and they were so happy they got to play with it and have a big time with it. They also had another pet bunny in that same cage, an older pet bunny that I guess they had been allowed to take care of in the past. But for some reason, this baby pet bunny infuriated Elwood. So at dinner that night, Elwood sat there laughing. Then he got up, watching everyone's face, and he opened the washroom door where the bunny's cage was located. The bunnies lay dead in their cage. Elwood had killed the bunnies, and then he beat her brother severely for actually saving that little bunny's life. For a few minutes, we are going to talk about some farm animals that did get abused by Elwood. And it does get pretty disturbing. So I just warn you again before we start that. Elwood not only physically abused the animals, but he also sexually abused them. Elwood had a number of dogs over the years. When he was finished with them, they were killed and buried. With what he taught the dogs, he had to kill them, or he feared Margaret would become suspicious and wonder why the dogs sniffed at the children and at him constantly. Elwood would commit brutality on these dogs and train the dogs to do the things to Trudy and her half-siblings too. Often when he was done with the dogs, he would just starve them to death. They were no use for him anymore, and the cruelty actually pleased him. Elwood would essay any of the animals on the farm that he thought he could get to cooperate with abuse. The barn was a terrifying place for Trudy. The smell of manure triggered many memories for Trudy because of the horrors that she encountered inside of that barn. She learned to avoid the barn after walking by the door of the barn one day, and she heard a cow bleating and her stepdad grunting. She peeked around the corner, and he was standing on a crate behind the cow with no clothes on. He turned and saw Trudy, so she just took off running because she didn't understand, but she knew that this did not look good. In her little mind, she knew what happened to her. I'm sure she assumed was happening to the cow as well. She saw her stepfather's rage as he landed on her after he caught her. Something else about him had scared her even more. Elwood was not only angry, he was excited. Pain shot through her arms as he dragged her back inside this barn. He yanked her undies off and included her in the abuse of this cow. No wonder she had to go into so many personalities to survive this. I can't imagine how your mind could get through something like this. And it would be the only way, really, I think, is if you had to get rid of yourself and pretend you were someone else. After that, there were many times when he was in the barn that she would hide from him behind the barn, hoping that he couldn't find her. Hanging high up in the center of the barn was a hook. Elwood would attach a harness to this hook, stand on a chair to lift Trudy up in order to hang her by this harness. He would do sadistic things to Trudy while she's hanging from this hook. This guy has the potential to be a serial killer, I think. Makes me wonder if he was, because this is quite frightening that he could think of these evil things to do. He also would sometimes drag Trudy upstairs on the loft in the hay to abuse her. Anywhere he could hide from Margaret, he would abuse the children. The barn, the attic, and the cellar all had bad memories for Trudy because that's exactly what he did. He hid and he would abuse her in these spots where he didn't think Margaret would come. One time he even abused her on the staircase of the house. When she was 5 years old, Trudy's stepfather had grabbed her off the stairs as she'd tried to get away from him. He had gripped the top of her head with one hand and jammed the other in her privates, holding her aloft with her feet just touching the stair treads like a human popsicle with his arm for a stick. The stepfather had laughed and dared her to run up the stairs ahead of him. This was a brave thing for Elwood to attempt since Margaret was in the house at the time. Sometimes Trudy believed that her mother knew about the abuse. Her mother warned her as a child not ever to discuss family business. There was also a discussion that she later remembered hearing that led her to believe that Margaret knew. Late one night, Trudy heard her mother and stepfather's voices and saw a light on in the kitchen. Trudy's bed was in the darkened living room. Her mother commented that Trudy might still be awake, and her stepfather laughed and said she's probably in there playing with herself. Then she heard her mom say, well, if you weren't after her all the time, she wouldn't know anything about that, would she? Trudy was terrified of snakes, and so am I. So this next story would be the worst possible nightmare I could ever imagine. There was an old well in the backfield of their farmhouse property. Trudy was in this field one day just minding her own business and playing with a daddy long-legged spider. She suddenly saw the shadow of her monster stepfather behind her. She heard him say, it's time to play. She knew she was being punished for hiding from Elwood earlier because she did not want to play one of his little sadistic games. She prepared to flee. Before her feet hit the dirt, her stepfather grabbed her, and she saw what he had hid behind his back. It was a crate, the kind that lettuce or carrots were packed in. The slats were thin, held together with wire, and the crate was open on two sides, forming a sort of swing. A rope had been attached to this crate. He tied the crate onto the well and then lowered Trudy down to the bottom with that crate. Elwood then took a bucket of snakes he had collected and threw them down into the well with Trudy. He took boards and placed them on top of the well to make it nice and dark inside this well. The troop took over her body in order to help her through this fear. It was way more than she could handle alone as a little child. She felt like that she possibly could have been left in there for hours. She was unsure of time because she kind of just phased out when she was down under there and just let the troop take control. This event triggered so much fear that anytime Elwood wanted to play his private games after that, she did not refuse. She was just too scared to. When Trudy turned 10, she went to spend the weekend with her bio father. She slept with him that night, and because she wanted to please her father, she started to fondle him. This was the only form of love she knew, and she thought this was normal. Her father was greatly disturbed by this behavior and told her to stop. The next morning, he drove Trudy back to her stepfather's farm of horror and never took her to his home again. Trudy Chase's abuse lasted from the age of 2 until she was 16 and ran away from home. Trudy Chase was not a real name. She changed it when she ran away from home so as to elude her parents should they try to find her. Trudy's siblings would later tell people that something Trudy's personality had never told her was that her mother did sexually abuse her too. Her mother, Margaret, died before she could be interviewed about these accusations, however. Trudy married, had a little girl named Carrie, divorced, held down several successful careers, then finally became a counselor, working with actually convicted child offenders to teach them the severe long-term damages they were causing to these little children by sexually abusing them. That's a lot of courage to work with those kind of people because, honestly, I could not. I would want to kill them. So, yay for you, Trudy, to be able to do that. She is absolutely strongest woman I can even think of. And not only go through all this, but then to counsel the predators like Elwood who had done these things to her. That is strength, more strength than I could ever have. That is an amazing amount of strength.
She's not all that bad, but I get confused because on the one hand, something inside me says you're awful. You are a monster. And on the other hand, I say, but God, what did I do that was so bad? Except for the one thing that I know I did 3 times. I'll never get over that. I'll never get over that. See, when I did it, I didn't have any feelings about that at all. None whatsoever. None. I knew it was wrong, and I went ahead and I did it anyway.
Trudy eventually lived with a boyfriend, and he remained with her until her death in 2010 at the age of 74. She died with her troops by her side. And like most people documented with DID, Trudy refused to integrate her personalities, instead thinking of them as a cooperating team that got her through some very difficult times, so she did not want to kill them off. In spite of the horror that was her childhood and her teen years, Trudy managed to become self-sufficient, strong, and independent. She became an example of a person who lived with MPD or DID, and only about 1% of the general population has been diagnosed with DID. Many incest victims were inspired by Trudy's life. She helped hundreds, if not thousands, of victims to stop hiding their secret and seek help. That's probably the greatest triumph of Trudy Chase's life. While Trudy's daughter, Carrie, grew up in her father's custody, she says having Trudy for a mother was wonderful. She said, I come home from school and I didn't know who I was coming home to. It's always interesting, she said. I can't imagine. Carrie continues to keep her mother's legacy alive through her Facebook page, Trudy Chase, and her website, TrudyChase.com. Trudy Chase wrote the book When Rabbits Howl and can be found on Amazon. And of course, part of my information did come from her book. Trudy Chase, may you forever rest in peace. Also, if you are a victim, you need help, just tell somebody you trust. Just tell. Anyway, guys, I'm going to let y'all go because I'm fixing to go on a motorcycle ride. My husband wanted to go out to eat today and go on a little short ride since it's not that hot right now. We got a little cool spell going on. I think it's only supposed to hit the 80s today. So we're going to go take a ride. I have my own Harley and he has a Harley and we just go goof off sometimes on them when we get some free time. Didn't have to watch my granddaughter today, so today is the day for free time. So we're going to go enjoy that before I get back to editing this video. I love y'all, and I thank y'all for everything, for supporting my channel always. Y'all are the best. Say bye. See you next time. The Murder She Said. We love you. Yeah, I hope that's water. I just kissed you. I don't know.
Lately I've been having trouble falling asleep. I close my eyes, I hear you calling to me. I try to block it out, but I'm just falling so deep down the rabbit hole where I don't wanna go. When you look into my eyes, tell me, what do you see?
You don't understand me.
Can you really feel my pain? Why are you lying to me?
You do not understand what
Don't need to worry about the destination.
You would back the
Just
fuck
be
up
happy
out my
when we
face.
get there.
Let me be.
Then again,
Instead, you just keep
on the other
pushing.
hand,
And that's why I'm trying to want you to leave me the
lately I've been having trouble falling asleep. I close my eyes, I hear you calling to me. I try to block it out, but I'm just falling so deep down the rabbit hole